everyone. Today we're going to be covering human brain anatomy. So starting off, I would like to tell you that brain is divided into three main parts. One is forebrain, one is midbrain, one is hindbrain. So forebrain further has cerebrum, then it has your thalamus, then it has limbic system. Your limbic system is further divided into three main parts, one being hypothalamus, the other being amygdala, and one being your hippocampus. Yes, so there we have it. Your midbrain is basically just the midbrain. It's a very small portion, so it is not further divided into any other parts. Your hindbrain, however, again has three main parts. One of them being your medulla oblongata. Okay, let me just go in order. Cerebellum, then you have cerebellum, pons, and medulla oblongata. So this is how your brain is structured. So the three main sections: forebrain, amygdala, forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Right. So let me just change this a little bit so it's clear. Yeah, better. So forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Then there's one more terminology that I want you all to be familiar with, and that is brainstem. So what all comes under brainstem? Let me try typing here. Yeah. So brainstem has your midbrain, then it has pons, then it has medulla oblongata. What doesn't it have? It doesn't have cerebellum. So just remember that. Remember that. So brainstem is basically midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata. Here, there's one more thing that just came to my mind, and I really want to put it here. And it is okay. How do I activate the pen? Well, I have to figure it out. Anyways, so the word pons it's derived from Latin language and it means bridge. So pons is basically a bridge between medulla oblongata and the midbrain, or you can say it's a bridge between medulla oblongata and the midbrain, or you can say between the spinal cord and the midbrain. Better. Now here, that's the image. So forebrain occupies most of the space, then midbrain is a very small portion, then you have the hindbrain. And when a baby is being developed in the womb, so this is the embryo, the brain of the embryo. So here, the first region, let me just take a second and figure out how to use the pen. Okay, so I have used this board quite a number of times, but I think I'm still working my way around. So pen was right here and I couldn't see it. Anyways, now I can. So let's start. Here you can see, we can say that this is the forebrain. Then a smaller part, let's say this part, you can say is midbrain, the smaller part. Then this is the hindbrain, right? So just get an idea. Uh, this is how it gets developed in the embryo, and over time, it develops into a proper adult brain like this. Okay? Now, this is another image. You can see here you have cerebrum. This whole region is cerebrum. There is cerebellum at the back. This is spinal cord. Here you have medulla oblongata. Here you have pons. Where's the midbrain? Midbrain, you can just say it's here, right? Here, this is thalamus. Just below thalamus will be hypothalamus, and there will be pituitary gland, right? So this is the whole brain. Yep, a proper image. And this thing is also called cerebral cortex. Cortex means something that's outside, right? It's located on the outer layer. So you can call it cerebral cortex. It has a lot of folds. And medulla is basically the opposite of cortex. It means inside, right? So forebrain, we already know it has cerebrum, it has thalamus, it has limbic system. Limbic system has three main parts. One is hypothalamus, then you have amygdala, and then you have hippocampus. Then you have midbrain, and then you have hindbrain. Hindbrain has on the top it has pons, and then below that it has medulla oblongata, and towards the right it has cerebellum. And what makes brainstem is your midbrain, your pons, and your medulla oblongata. You don't include cerebellum in your brainstem. Fine. That's the structure. So we are done with that. I hope I have revised it so many times over this video that I hope it's in your brain now. In your forebrain. Yeah, because forebrain is responsible for your memory. So I hope it's in your forebrain now. Now brainstem. See, brainstem is very much closer to your spinal cord, right? So it is responsible for. This is your brainstem. So it's responsible for your basic functions like breathing, like circulation, like digestion, and all of that. And or you can say that it is responsible for involuntary actions. Let me just jot it down. And your forebrain is responsible for voluntary actions. Yes, so here. Now let's start off with the functions of all of these parts, starting with the forebrain cerebrum. Now you can see that it's the largest portion of the brain. It has a lot of folds in it, and it is divided into two cerebral hemispheres which are connected together by a band of axons which are called corpus callosum. Let me search for an image of it and stick it here. Corpus callosum. So it basically joins both the hemisphere together. And here is the image. Let me just stick it, copy image, and paste it. Yep, here. So this is corpus callosum, and it's a band of axons. Now, each hemisphere contains four surface lobes. You have frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobe. So there are four lobes. I have the image here. So the frontal lobe, it is usually responsible for like the executive tasks. It deals with your emotions and stuff like that. Then occipital lobe is my favorite. It deals with your primary vision. Then you have your temporal and parietal. So temporal is responsible for your hearing and your language control and all of that. And parietal is basically responsible for your sensations and your reactions. So these are four lobes of your cerebrum. Um, you can say overall if they have asked you for the function of cerebrum and they've not asked you for particular lobes, then you can say that it is responsible for sight, speech, smell, taste, hearing, conscious sensations, voluntary movements, learning, memory, thinking, decision making, reasoning, judgment, and dreams. So dreams also come under this, right? Don't forget that. I've already told you the voluntary things come under your forebrain. So cerebrum, one of the questions that very frequently asked is memorization. So memory is associated with your cerebrum, don't forget that. All right, now, moving on, I told you that there is thalamus, which is located here. So, thalamus is situated just below the cerebrum, and you can say that it acts like a relay center. It receives all the sensory impulses and it channels them to the limbic system and to the appropriate regions of the cortex for interpretation. So it's basically it serves like a relay center, I've said, or you can call it a router. So it basically will organize the data and will further send the instructions that okay, this data needs to be sent here, this data needs to be sent there. So it acts like a router, you can say that. And also one very important point, that it receives all sensory impulses except sense of smell. So thalamus, it receives all sensory impulses except sense of smell, so remember that. Then I spoke about limbic system. Now limbic system has hypothalamus, amygdala, and hippocampus. Let me look up for a photo for all of these three. Okay, so here's the image. You can see these are three tiny regions. So altogether they're called limbic system. Which three regions are these? I've already mentioned them before: hypothalamus, amygdala, and hippocampus. So hypothalamus, we all are very much familiar with it. Okay, it's situated here. Then here you can see amygdala, it's another small region, and then amygdala and hippocampus is right here. Good. So hypothalamus, it is basically it maintains homeostasis. Always remember that. Hypothalamus maintains homeostasis. It's responsible for thermoregulation, for osmoregulation, for the menstrual cycle, for sleep-wake cycle, which is also known as circadian rhythm. Then your fight or flight response, your biorhythms, again, your sexual response. So all of those, things which are needed for homeostasis, they're under control of your hypothalamus. So where is it located? It's located on the ventral side of the thalamus. So I've said that the thalamus is here, right? So just below it, you're gonna find a hypothalamus. So you can say this is basically the major coordinating center of involuntary activities. All of what I've said right now, these were involuntary activities. So you can say this is the major coordinating center for those. And then we have to go with amygdala. So amygdala deals with your emotions. So it controls the feelings and emotions of pleasure, punishment, love, hate, anger, fear, rage, and sexual arousal. And these are basically two almond shaped masses of neurons on either side of the thalamus. So if this is your whole thalamus, so these are going to be two masses of neurons on both the sides of thalamus. Fine. Then we have hippocampus. Now, hippocampus, how I usually is memorize it like is that this word campus basically means your school, right? So what do we do at the school? We do learning. So hippocampus means it's a region that is responsible for long-term memory. So it consists of two horns that curve back from amygdala, and it helps, like it basically builds on your long-term memory, you can say. So it's basically required for learning, right? And limbic system, again, let's revise. It comprises of three parts: amygdala for emotions, hippocampus for long-term memory, and hypothalamus, which is for osmoregulation, thermoregulation, circadian rhythm, menstrual cycle, fight flight response, so all the homeostasis. So limbic system is basically arc between, you can say, thalamus and cerebrum. So it's an arc between thalamus and cerebrum. So yep, that now we've covered forebrain. Let's move to midbrain. Now midbrain is a relay between your forebrain and hindbrain, as easy as it sounds. It contains reticular formation, which is a network of neurons running through medulla in the hindbrain, through the midbrain, and up into the thalamus and hypothalamus of the forebrain. So, what's the function of midbrain and what's the function of these reticular formations in particular? Let me move to an appropriate image. This one would be fine. Yeah, so we're talking about midbrain. Where is midbrain? It's right here, the small segment. So it acts as a relay station for tracts passing between spinal cord and cerebellum. Coordination and relay of visual and auditory information filters sensory information, and it sends outputs to higher brain centers. So it's going to screen and it's going to remove unwanted information. So it acts like a filter, you can say. So if the information is coming from down here and it's meant to go to your forebrain, so it first has to go through your midbrain, and midbrain is gonna it has the reticular formations, and they're gonna screen and they're gonna remove the unwanted information, that right, the information that is basically just extra and that's gonna confuse your brain. So midbrain is just going to filter that out. That's it. Now moving to hindbrain. Midbrain is really good. We covered that in just a minute. So hindbrain has pons, it has cerebellum, and it has medulla oblongata. So don't forget the order. On the top you have pons, and let me just change the color. And below that you have medulla oblongata. So don't forget that order. They can possibly ask you that. Which color? Okay, green. Pons is here, and then medulla oblongata is below that, and then below that you have spinal cord, but and towards the right you have cerebellum, right? And what is the brainstem? These three things. not the cerebellum. These three: midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. So, what is the function of pons? As I've said, it is derived from the Latin word and it means bridge. And so it basically just acts as a bridge for the conduction of impulses between cerebellum, medulla oblongata, and cerebrum. So it's concerned with the rate and pattern of heartbeat and breathing. Remember that. It's concerned with heartbeat rate and heartbeat pattern. And it influences the transition between sleep and wakefulness. You can remember that for the sake of learning it. Then cerebellum is the second largest portion of the brain. Cerebellum. It's my favorite. It is linked with motor memory. So your body control and motor memory. So for example, when you were really young, you started learning. Let me put a good picture. Yes, better. So when you were young, your parents taught you how to ride a cycle. And then now you know it. You never forgot, right? Because you've developed the muscle memory, you can balance yourself. You don't have to learn every time you're gonna go close to your bicycle. You'll be like, okay, just give me 1 hour. I'll learn how to cycle and I'll come back. No, now you know it. It's stored in your cerebellum. Cerebellum is responsible for your muscle memory. It is the best developed in birds because birds know how to fly and they need their muscle memory all the time because they keep flying. So you can say it's best developed in birds, especially the birds that engage. Okay, this allows them to engage in complex activity of flight. And I've told you it's the second largest portion of the brain. It consists of a central lobe and two lateral lobes. You don't need to really know that, but you can know it for the sake of learning. So it basically coordinates muscle activity and guides smooth and accurate motion, body control, position, and coordination of the actions of individual muscles to produce complex activities such as walking, running, riding bicycles, doing delicate works with hand. The cerebellum is also involved in learning, memory, storage for behaviors. There's one more thing. Um, if you people know about touch typing, where you like you if you've learned touch typing, it's basically where you don't look at the keyboard, you just look at the screen and you type. So in the beginning they looked at the keyboard and they saw, okay, here's Q, here's W, here's R, here's E, here's T, here's Y. So that information got stored in their cerebellum. Their finger muscles, like the fingertip muscles, now they've learned that, okay, here's Q, and now they can type pretty fast. So yeah, that's also linked with the muscle memory. Then we have medulla oblongata. Moving medulla oblongata. Now talking about it, let me bring the image. Yes, right here. So it is. I told you previously that involuntary actions, the hub of involuntary actions is hypothalamus. Hypothalamus was associated with homeostasis. So there are a lot of activities that are done by hypothalamus, but the ones which are left, they're looked after by medulla oblongata. So, yep, what activities are we talking about? We're talking about heartbeat, your respiration, your digestion. So, all of that comes under medulla oblongata's niche. Like your respiratory center is here. So, yep. Oh, what's happening to my image? And yeah, here we're done with the entire anatomy of the brain. One question was there, and that is that what happens if your cerebellum gets destroyed? If it gets destroyed, the movements become jerky, shaky, and disturbed. Also, if people consume alcohol, your cerebellum. If people consume alcohol, it really interferes with their movement. So, what gets affected during alcohol consumption? It's your cerebellum. So, yeah, we're done with today's lecture and your forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Let's recap. Cerebrum, your memory. Thalamus, it's router. So, it's basically just gonna organize information. The limbic system is having three parts: hypothalamus, homeostasis; amygdala, emotions; hippocampus, long-term learning; then midbrain, small portion. Midbrain is a small portion, and it just relays information between forebrain and hindbrain, and you can say it filters out unnecessary information. Then you have your hindbrain. It has cerebellum, muscle memory, pons. It's a bridge, you can say, and it is concerned with the rate and the pattern of heartbeat, you can say. Then you have medulla oblongata. It has all the other involuntary actions associated with it, like heartbeat, respiration, digestion. It has a respiratory center. Even your vomiting, coughing, sneezing, these all are involuntary, right? So they come under the control of medulla oblongata. Then we had brainstem. It is midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Cerebellum is not included. Remember that. So thank you for being attentive. Lambi video.